Hello, and we're going to have a look at another video now. So this video is about structuring the writing and looking at how you can write an effective piece of writing. Now if we have a look, this is important because this question itself is worth 25% of your overall GCSE and 50% of the actual paper itself. So it's really important that we get this right. There tends to be a lot of arrogance about writing, and particularly story writing. Students tend to think that they can do it. They've been writing stories since the beginning of time and they know how to write an effective story. And as I mentioned in my other video, they don't always know how to write an effective story. And their version of an effective story is very different to the examiner. The examiner wants something clever, intelligent, well-structured and interesting. What they don't want is something dramatic and exciting. You know, the person on this bus, we don't want a murder on this bus. That's not dramatic and interesting for us. What we want is something quite clever and intelligent. So going through the paper again. So you've got the question 5, and so you get given a picture, which could be absolutely anything, and you could be given a story title. So it's one of those two things. Remember, you are not having to write about everything in the picture, and that's the big mistake that a lot of people do. They try to write about everything. So let's have a look at that picture. So they'll talk about all the people outside, all the people on the bus. They'll talk about, you know, the yellow poles, the windows, the lights, the reflection, the telephone. You know, they all try to do everything. Don't. And in fact, use the picture as a starting point. And often what I say to students is, you know, yeah, that's where you're going to start, but who knows where you're going to go with your writing. So just use it as a starting point rather than not the whole thing itself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take you through 2 different methods of how to structure your writing and how to order your writing. Planning is incredibly important. The number of students that don't plan, and as a result, they do badly. You know, you can tell somebody that's really thought about it and structured it really effectively compared to somebody that's just written the first thing that they've done. And you'll see that straight away in the writing, because you'll see people go, there was a woman, she looked sad. There was another woman, she was also sad. There was a third woman, she was even sadder than all the rest of them. And, you know, and all you get is listing things. And the examiner doesn't want you to list things. So I'm going to give you this method. The method we call is the box method. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So what you do is you box off things. Now for this piece of writing, you want to be writing 3 paragraphs. You can write a bit more, but 3 quality paragraphs. So my best bet to do is really do this. So draw a box around something in the picture that you think is interesting. So here, this is what I've got. I've got some reflections in the window, and I can spend some time describing that, what the reflections are like. You can talk about the window being dirty, never cleaned. You can do about handprint, or you can talk about reflections and the light, and you can talk about building up the atmosphere. Then what you do is you pick something else and make sure it's something different that's going to contrast to the original box. So here we go, I'm going to pick this woman, and I can kind of then think about how I'm going to link the window to the woman. So maybe what happens is the reflection of the woman's head is in that window reflection, so then that links on and I can move onto that woman. And then I can think about explaining the woman, and maybe this woman, going back to our other video, about this woman is looking forward to going home so she can see her daughter, and she's really excited, and that's why she's at the front of the bus. Then we can think about, well, what else? What else could I describe on this bus? Remember, you don't have to talk about everything, and really we don't want to talk about everything. We want something that's going to be interesting and we can explain in depth. So I thought for this one in particular, I would go for this other woman. And I thought what would be interesting is if I have this one woman being happy at the front of the bus, and maybe this woman at the back of the bus, and in a way that she isn't happy. And whereas the other woman has got her daughter to look forward to, this last woman at the back of the bus, she hasn't got anybody to look forward to. And so actually she's quite sad. And maybe what we could say is kind of metaphorically she's put herself at the back of the bus because, you know, she's not in a rush to go anywhere. And so we've got a contrast of these 2 things, and you're changing the mood of the writing. So we've got the reflection, the happy woman, and then the sad woman. And then you can build this up into this story, and you can build this up into this description in terms of this writing. So the first method we'll call the box method. And you can talk about other things, and you can box other things off, but really, best thing to do is keep to 3, and then try and link those 3 items together. Now those items are best if they're lots of different things. I know I've got 2 people in here, but I think the 2 people would actually be an interesting thing to write about, because, you know, having one happy and one sad is kind of a bit of a drama and a bit of conflict that you've got there, and it makes it interesting. Now, a bit of a have a go yourself. Think about now, and pause the video, think about what would you use if you were going to have to turn this into a piece of writing. So what would be the 3 things that you would describe? So just pause the video now. And let's have a look what you could have put down. So you could have put this, and you've got tons of things there. Now what we noticed with the students who are getting the lower marks, what they tend to do is they tend to write about everything, and they list everything. So you'll find their paragraphs saying there were trees and branches and leaves, and there were animals hiding in the clouds above them and in the sky, and you get about 17 different things in one piece of writing. And what would be best here is maybe just have a paragraph describing the trees, and then describe your middle paragraph about the water and what's the water like, and maybe just focus on one aspect of the water, the surface. And then maybe right at the end you could then have an idea about looking at the sky and how that's reflected. And then you can kind of try and link all these different things together, because the trees are causing shadows on the water and the water's reflecting the sky. So you can see easily how you can link all these things together, because we're not just looking at different objects and describing different objects. We think about how we can weave these into a piece of writing. Now the second method is more complex. So the first method, your box method, is pretty straightforward. Draw 3 boxes and write about those 3 things. The second method is a lot more complex. And with it being more complex, this is what we're going to look at. Now, with writing, you have choices, and all the time you've got choices. So what you've got with any piece of creative writing, you've got 8 things that you could be talking about. So I'm going to go through them one at a time. So you've got the top left, you've got actions. So you can focus on an action, something moving or not moving. Then we've got along the top, we've got settings. So you could describe something about the settings. So if we're going back to the water, we could talk about that, you know, the overall setting. Third one at the top there is weather. And you can talk about how pathetic fallacy, how the weather affects the characters and the things that are going on. So if it's good weather, it's a happy environment. If it's bad weather, it's a negative environment. You know, and you can play around with that. The last one on the top, you've got emotions. So you could start with an emotion. So, for example, if we were going to look at that picture of the water, we could look at kind of, maybe that's a sad environment. So we can talk about the sadness of things, of how there's an overriding sense of isolation, misery, and that's reflected because the weather is rainy and the trees are leaning forward and the water's grey. At the bottom then, we've got dialogue. So you can have characters just talking, or the next one along, an object. So you could focus on one particular thing. Then we've got character, and then finally we've got thoughts. So what people are thinking. Now these 8 different things are the 8 different building blocks of writing. You know, you will rotate and you will go through each of these different things at different points. The good writers will decide a lot more than most about why start off with this particular thing. So I'm going to show you how that applies to your writing. Let's have a look at this now. So we're back to the picture then. So instead of working on the picture and going, here's a box, here's a box, here's a box, you can think of it from this angle. What would be good to talk about from an action? So where could I see some action in this? So maybe it could be the movement of the bus, it could be the shuddering of the bus, it could be the kind of the talking of people at the back, it can be the kind of fidgeting or the kind of the tapping that people have got because they're keen to get on. Or the next one we could talk about setting. We could have a look at, what is it about this setting? What's the street like? Where is it? Is it in a city? Is it in a town? They're very, very different settings, and they're going to affect the characters and the people very, very differently. Or the weather. Is it a cold day? Is it a warm day? Is it a rainy day? All these things are things we can think about. The feelings. So what are the characters feeling? Now, we've already touched upon that because in method 1 we start talking about how these people were feeling. Okay. Next one, dialogue. So we've got a woman on a mobile phone. What's the conversation that she's having? So could we be thinking about the conversation? Is she having a conversation? Is it a happy conversation? Or is it, a quite dramatic conversation, or just a conversation that's just annoying to listen to? Moving along, objects. What objects are there? You've got a button, I think that's on the side of the bus wall, and obviously that's down for anybody that's sat on the chair with disability. Maybe that button has never been used because people don't sit there very often, and maybe people get up and use another button. And having a look at that and describing that in great detail. Next one along, obviously we've got characters, we've got some people there. Remember, in the picture, you can make it up. You can't see everybody on that bus, so you can invent somebody. It's fine. And the next one along, obviously, thoughts. So what are characters thinking or feeling at this point? So all those are the components. Now, before you get a little bit confused and think, right, have I got to mention all of those? No. And in fact, I would say you never really want to use all of those in a piece of writing. What you want to do is probably think about 3 of those. So think about, right, I'm going to start with an object, or I'm going to start with setting, and then I'm going to end with a character. You want to be thinking about those kinds of things. So here we're going to go. So we're going to go with this idea of the story about a mother looking forward to seeing her daughter on the bus. Remember, it's a mundane story because it's not about the drama. If we wanted drama, we'd put a bomb on that bus, wouldn't we? Alright? And we would say that the bomb was ticking down and nobody knew about it. But this isn't about making drama. This is about making the writing mundane, but also deeper, more complex than just a case of, ooh, this is exciting, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. We want something deep and meaningful. And so let's have a think about it. And I'm just going to get you to pause the video for a second and just think, right, you've got that picture there. What would be the things that you would like to describe if you were looking at this little story idea here? A mother looking forward to seeing her daughter. What are the 3 things that you would pick up on? Okay, so here we go. So if we think about now, what could we come up with? And these are just some ideas, and just throwing some ideas together to see what could come up. So raindrops smeared the windows. So we could have something to do with the weather. A girl gazed at her phone screen. We've got a character thing there. An old lady ferreted in her bag for a tissue. So there's an action. That ferreting about means searching quite fast and quick. The street was crammed with cars and buses. Now it's a simple sentence just to describe the setting. A woman sat on her own thinking of home. So we've got thoughts. Joy filled her face, and we've got emotions. So you can see that we've got those different types of writing there, all very simple sentences at this moment. We're not thinking about being really, really complex with the writing. We're just going for very, very simple, what are we going to write about? So, weather. We've got a character, an action, setting, and we've got thoughts. thoughts, feelings. The one thing we haven't got there is dialogue. Okay, so that's something else that we could have done with. Now once you've picked three, and I've picked three here, the girl gazed at the phone screen, the street was crammed with cars and buses, a woman sat on her own thinking of home. So what I've done from that is kind of build up, and this is how you can build your writing up and you can make it more effective. A lot of the time students just jump into the writing, and actually that doesn't help anybody, because jumping into the writing doesn't get you to do those really important thought processes of where you've got to test an idea out. A lot of people, when they're writing stories, they think that a story idea appears in their head, and then they I've got to write that down because that's my first idea. This is me playing around, so you can see how we can change things around and we can move it. So I've picked out on the three things. So I've gone with a character, and I've gone with the middle, the setting, and then I've got the bit at the end with thinking. So I've got three there. But there, in a way, is my paragraph ideas. Paragraph 1, the girl gazing at the screen. Paragraph 2, the street crammed setting. Paragraph 3, the thought process. And then once I've got that, I can then build it on, and I can come up with some ideas. So here it's just a sentence. Her eyes were glued to the screen, blind to the hustle and bustle around her. Second sentence. A man swore loudly in the street, his anger at a driver pushing ahead. So I've kind of changed the second one, but that will relate to the setting because I can expand a bit further. But I've also got that dialogue in there. And the last one then, I've got the woman looked at the girl and thought of how lucky she was. And in that last one, I've returned back to the girl at the beginning, and I've made a connection between my opening and my ending. A very simple thing to do, but all that from planning and thinking about ideas. So then, once you've got those starting points, you can then start developing that paragraph and taking that further, because in a way, there are my three paragraphs. And all I've got to do is develop those ideas further. So, for example, her eyes were glued to the screen. I could describe the screen, couldn't I? And I could say, what was she watching on that? And why was she watching? And, is there a story in there? Is she falling out with somebody? Or is she waiting for an important call from somebody and she's staring at the phone? The second paragraph, then I can think about this man and think about, well, what's going on in the street? What does it look like? How crowded is the street? What's going on? And the last one, I can just do a description of kind of the background about this, about the woman and how she's excited to get home, but also, she's looking at this other girl and she's thinking how lucky the girl is, but also maybe she's thinking about how lucky she is because she's got her daughter waiting for her. And then when it gets to this point, you can start thinking about, how am I going to link these together? So maybe the girl in the opening paragraph is glued to her phone, but she hears the man swearing. And that's what makes her look up, and she looks out at the window, and she sees what's outside the bus. And then maybe, at the end of the story, the description, the woman looking at the girl is because she's looking around, and she's kind of impatient, and she's really excited about getting home, so she's keen, she doesn't like the fact that the bus has probably stopped. And so we've kind of got a real structure to our writing, and we've got something that we can develop and expand on. Now those are just two methods. Okay, so those two methods are ways for you to approach the writing. On average, we would say that you need to spend 10 minutes planning your writing. The more you plan, the better your writing will be. If you don't plan, then examiners can see that. We can tell straight away if you're rambling on. And what the examiner wants is something well structured, something clever, and something intelligent. And what they don't want is hundreds of lists. You know, they don't want that. They don't want you to say, and there was this man, and then this man, and then this man. They don't want that. What they want is something interesting and detailed. Now, I'm going to direct you to some other videos. Miss Pierce will set a bit of a quiz online for you on Show Me Homework, which will be linked to making sure that you've watched these videos and ensuring that you've got the key ideas from the videos. What I'd also suggest is have a look at some of the other videos on there. There are loads of videos out there on YouTube, but also we've put loads of videos on to help you with your writing. And I'll just draw attention again to the write it, build it, push it. A lot of what we're doing with years 7, 8 and 9, and you may think that you're better than them, but actually, you know, you can still practice some of those skills. And what we notice, certainly from an English point of view, is lots of students think they are great story writers, and they may be good story writers for the kind of stories that they want to watch, but they're not good story writers when it comes to actually writing for an examiner. There's a particular style of story writing that examiners are kind of looking for, and so that's what we're trying to work on. It's about that stylish writing. So have a look at the videos, see what's in there and see what you can pick up, and the idea is that there's lots of different things on there for you. There will be more videos next week, so do keep an eye out and we'll put them on Show Me Homework. Thank you.